Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Truth Works. I'm Jessica Neal, and I'm your host. I'm still minus Patty. We miss you, Patty. Come back. We love you. But we have an old friend of the family. He's been on the show before. His name is Robert Glazer. He has a new book that we're going to talk about. But many of you probably know the book we talked about last time, which was The 2-Week Notice, which, by the way, Robert, ever since I read that book and we had that conversation, I have, because I go and I advise companies, I coach them. I'm like,
Yeah.
can you just
Try
start
this.
out doing this? Like, make it normal, make it easy to say goodbye. Like, I don't know why we make it so hard. Ugh, anyways, but that's not why you're
Yeah, the
here.
line, the line that since that book, the line that's sort of codified for me is that we treat the end of a professional relationship like more like a romantic relationship than a sports contract, where
Yes.
it's just a 2-year deal and it's over, and people want to do different things, and that's totally fine.
I know. And I mean, at Netflix, we were like, we're a sports team. You're gonna, at some point you get traded. We need better offense than we do defense.
There's an argument that some relationships would work better to say after 3 years, be like, do we want to re-sign the next agreement or not, or are we just going forward because we're going forward?
Yes, we had a woman on the show a while ago, Joanne Lublis, and she and her husband, like back in the '70s, did a contract. Like, we'll do this for your career, we'll do this for my career, and I was like, that's brilliant. I don't know why I didn't think about some of those things, but too late for me.
Yeah,
Almost, I'm
well,
18 years
yeah,
in. Can't.
you've signed the lifetime agreement, so.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, listen. Okay. Tell us, remind everybody who you are and what you do. And then let's get into the new book and tell us the title and tell us how it all came about. I'm excited about it because this one, it's similar. There's like elements from 2-Week Notice that are in this, but I'm excited to kind of unpack the differences.
Sure. So I have started a few different companies, the largest of which is called Acceleration Partners. It's a global partner marketing agency, over 300 people. I've since moved into the board and executive chairman role.
Oh, I
Spent a
didn't know
lot of
that.
time. Yeah,
Where, was that
that's
the case
been.
last time?
Yeah, that was the case
Okay.
last time too.
Okay.
Yeah, I've promoted my number two to CEO years ago. We did a investment with a private equity firm, and I've been growing the business. And over the years, I got passionate about figuring out some of the things that we had done differently in the business. We had won over 30 Best Places to Work awards and some Glassdoor awards. And I started realizing that, if I was communicating these things and they were helping other people in other organizations. And now kind of that's where I spend a lot of my time. And probably the biggest transition for me in my career in leadership was actually figuring out my personal core values and realigning kind of my life and leadership around that. And it was kind of an odyssey between figuring that out, building a program at our company to help other people figure that out, then people asking for that information and then turning it into a course, and then having a lot of people say that this course was super impactful on me, and actually, like, I've made different decisions now, and then thinking, okay, well, how do I get this to more people? Because a lot of people just don't do courses, right? And I thought about writing a book, and I had this like vision or this nightmare of this book called like On Values in Barnes and Nobles, and everyone walks by it and no one wants to read a book on values. But the way that he was doing this, and this notion of, yes, family and integrity and these things that you've been saying don't actually work as core values, just like they don't work in a company for different reasons. You need core values that can help you make a decision and that tie and understand where they come from, and they need to be really distinct, and you need to really, like, the opposite of it needs to make you uncomfortable. And anyone that I walked through that or gave a presentation to was like, oh, this is different. I was like, how do I show this to people rather than tell them? And that's when the sort of concept of a parable came up to me. And I said, actually, if I can create a compelling story about this character going through some conflicts with what I call the big three, which is your partner, your community, and your vocation, and that are all kind of core value based, and he's kind of wrestling with this. I think if people see this, they'll be like, oh, this is different, or I resonate with this. And then I can explain the framework and how to do it. And so far that does seem to be resonating, because it's a fun and easy and relatable story, and it's about
Yeah.
70 minutes, but at the end it lays it all out. Like, if you want to do the work, here's
Yeah.
what you just saw this character go through.
Well, tell us, I know the title, but tell everybody the title of the book.
So the book's called The Compass Within, a little story about the values that guide us. And it's a story about a up and coming 20-year-old named Jamie Hines, who seems to have everything going his way. He's engaged. He's got a great job. He has a promotion opportunity falling into his lap. He and his fiance are living in this gentrified, sort of upwardly mobile town that they want to potentially buy a house in. But below the surface, he's having some questions about his work and his relationship and his community, and he ends up connecting with a mentor who really helps him understand what he values and for most people, what they've always valued. We all have this as compass, and some of us are running into walls and going, ow, and then walking the other way. And other people know where the walls are and avoid it. Having talked to a lot of people about this book and this concept and find their values, I found that most people have found a way to organize things in their life around their values, but they don't actually know what they are or can't articulate it, but they've naturally, but there's a huge difference being able to say, like, electric fence there. Like, who would want to take 3 jobs that don't align with their values and then the one that does, right? So I find a lot of people get there, they just take a lot of wrong turns. And when you can put some words and phrases and themes behind this and understand it, you make, and ultimately the whole thing is about making better decisions and the most important decisions.
Yeah, that it's all so true. So this character that you have in the book now, is that a fictional character? Is that you? Like, where did you draw this from?
Interesting. I actually did my own podcast with my co-host for our launch on Tuesday, in which I haven't really talked about the characters, because a lot of times people want to talk about the framework, and we were talking about some of this. So this will be the second time. But I've been accused of being Jamie, who's the protagonist in the story, and I'd be accused of being Jack, who's the mentor in the story. I think I'm somewhere in the middle.
Okay, but you drew from personal experience for.
I drew, right. They're not my experiences, but I drew from a bunch of personal experiences and kind of amalgamating them. Particularly with Jack, I think he's sort of like, he would be like my perfect mentor if I was like.
What's so perfect about Jack? Let's talk about Jack. What's so perfect about him?
He's kind of smart but humble. He's challenging. He's a little Socratic, in it, and he's someone kind of who's doing what he's teaching. I think those are the qualities that I've sort of always looked for, in a mentor. And again, he's just very unassuming, even though he's successful.
Yeah.
And made some very values oriented decisions in his own life. I think everyone has been a little bit of Jamie in their 20s, when they're chasing the big goal and getting all excited. So I always tell people there's a lot of the town that he lives in. I mean, it's not real. There's a lot of, there's almost truth that's like irrelevant sometimes in the stories. Like, all my kids are in the story as small parts, and there's little bits of truth, but each character has been kind of designed to really make the clear point. And in fact, we were talking about how in some of the earlier drafts, like Jamie's boss is Matt is he's complicated, I think, in the final, but he was more of a real jerk in the first draft, and that actually made it. In order to understand the nuances of this, it has to be more complicated. Him being
it has to be more subtle.
It has to be more subtle.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I kind of like this guy, but I don't like this guy. But because we've had the boss where you're like, no, I think they're going to do the right thing, but they're not. If they're just out there flamingly horrible, like, it's really easy to be like, no, like, this is not me. So he got a little more subtle over time.
Well, I just find that it's so interesting because it's just a different way to write one of these books, right? Like
Very different
generally,
way.
yeah, like generally it's like here's the lessons and here's the framework and so you kind of built out this whole story, which I think that's how a lot of people, well, at least I don't know if it's a lot of people, but me myself, and then when I thought about learning at Netflix, we never did like traditional learning and development stuff. We
Yeah,
did like case studies, and
right.
like people learned through the case studies, like working through it, and like I think that's like what you're trying to get people to do, like through that character, they're trying to work through it and kind of say like, what would you do, right?
Right.
And
Yeah. So
where's your
I'm
mind?
a big fan of like Pat Lencioni's books. I've loved them. I've
Oh
read them all in a
yes.
day. Bob Berg's book, even the most famous book on operations, The Goal, is a parable, which is and all of us. I remember all the lessons in the theory of constraints and the whole thing from it. So what is interesting is obviously I've had like there's a lot of early copies that go out to people, and a lot of the notes that I've gotten and that's why I said Jamie's and Amir are, I had such a similar thing. Or 5 years ago, I was in this situation. Or, they're probably not calling to tell me about the relationship struggles that it highlighted. But this book probably will be responsible for some breakups, which I'm not sure I'm ready to deal with yet. I already had someone come
Uh-oh,
up
watch
after a
out.
presentation and talk to me that they realized that their kid had an opposite value of them and it was a real problem. And I was just like, yeah, that's hard. I wasn't
That wasn't your goal. Yeah.
no, I'm just not ready to provide therapy, right?
Right.
To
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
in that, but there's some deep truths in this. So, but basically, that's what I keep hearing is that people there, whether there's a story or an interaction or there's a funny thing. One of the things in the book is there's a 2 weeks notice.
Of course.
The thing in there, his boss, one of the this won't give away anything, but one of the things that happens with his boss is that he is a very loyal person on his team who gives him several months notice that she's going back to business school, right, in June. And he's like, great, thank you for letting me know, like you should work here till then. And his boss finds out and was like, that's not how we do things here. If she doesn't want to be here, like she should leave. And he's like,
Yeah.
she doesn't want to be here. She's going back to business school and she's doing great work. And there's this dialogue around that. And Jamie talks about this TED talk that he saw. So again, a little meta in there.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's what I've heard the most is that whether it was a relationship or actually someone even last week, there was a group that had read the book and that had done the course, and then they asked me to kind of do an hour coaching thing with them, a company, and I was kind of walking them through it. And I could tell this woman like zoned in on the community. I could tell that she had the epiphany that she did not live in the right place. Like you could just see it on her face that she was
Yeah.
like,
Like, oh no.
I am not in the right community for me.
Yeah, but I think, even that concept of like community as well as professional, right? Like those all matter. Personal, professional, community.
I think I always say, I think the community, and it's defined a few different ways, right? It could be your town, it could be your neighborhood, it could be the organizations where you spend the most time, right? The
Right.
people around you.
Your
If you believe
friends.
you're
Yeah.
the average of the five people, you spend the most time with. I think it's the one people forget the most, where, if you're constantly asked to do things that let's just pretend health has become a value for you. And maybe that's because you had a health scare or you had a parent die young. And so like, this is just a priority for you. Well, if you live in Newcastle, England, this probably isn't the right place for you where everyone starts going to the bar at 2 o'clock. Or let's just say you live in a town where the primary social activity is drinking every night, right? You are either going to, there's three choices or sort of two, but you're either going to go and drink and feel bad about yourself, or not drink and be like, why am I at the bar?
Right.
Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to be here. Or you're not going to go and feel on the outside of whatever kind of the activity is. If that's really important to you, you should move to Boulder, where all
Yeah.
night you can do things and play around, and socialization has nothing to do with things that are unhealthy. Similarly, if you're someone who has a value of include all perspectives and you like talking to different people and hearing different things, you probably don't want to live in one of these towns where you can tell, like, as it comes out to voting, like, you better have one sign or another in your yard, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's not a great place for a centrist, or
Right.
someone who doesn't want to be really, entrenched in different political viewpoints. So these communities, like, operating outside of the things that you want to be doing is inherently energy draining, right? So, and I think a lot of us that's the one we forget about the most. Like, are we spending time with people who share our values and are doing the same sort of things that we want to be doing?
Yeah. So how did you like come up with the frame? Like, how did you come up with the framework?
Yeah.
How did you? I mean, obviously, there's the story and how you get people there, but how did you know this? Like,
So yeah, this was a 10-year odyssey.
Okay.
So in 2013, I went to a pretty intensive leadership program where I thought, and I was right at the right inflection point.
is
for
it
my
like
company, and I
Aspen or like what?
no, it was done by EO with like
Uh-huh.
25 people from around the world, but modeled after, it was like a 5-day pretty intensive leadership training with like 25 people from all around the world. And I thought, great, I'm going to learn all these tactics and how to be a better leader. And I described the first couple of days as a big mirror, Jessica. Like, who is Jessica? What do you care about? What do you value? And how are you going to like figure out how to lead from that authentically? And what I came away from that realizing was I think I have pretty deeply held core values. And I think it's probably why I'm frustrated about some of the things I'm doing. But I really totally can't articulate what they are, other than I'd probably do the things everyone else does: integrity, family, and we can talk about why those are not good core values later.
Okay. Yes.
And so after this retreat, I became pretty determined to figure this out. And I went online, I did some research, and there's just a bunch of crap. Like, most programs or whatever give you a list of keywords and tell you to pick them.
Yeah.
And I just didn't find that super helpful. And so I ended up building a process. I came up with 5 what I thought were pretty differentiated core values that were very kind of action oriented. And those were to find a better way, health and vitality, self-reliance, respectful authenticity, which directly led to the 2 weeks notice work, and then long-term orientation. Again, they don't sound like anything. They're distinct. They're different. You could make decisions on them. The opposite of them are very frustrating to me. And I kind of started aligning my life around them, and I just saw a ton of changes. And we started basically, our company was growing really fast, and we started kind of a leadership academy program on our company where we would take 10 of our up-and-coming leaders every year. And I was like, I'm going to do this core value thing with them. We did the why and the core value. And they're like, why? They thought we were going to do company core value stuff. And I was like, look, I don't think you can be a level 5 kind of Jim Collins, like, authentic leader if you're not clear about yourself. And the more I talked to people and the more I did this work, I found that, well, where does that come from? It's always deep. It's deep, formative childhood experiences that people are either doubling down on something that was really meaningful to them, or they, more often than not, they're running in the other
they're
direction.
shoving something down deep inside them.
And this is like their operating system as a 40-year-old. So we did 5 or 6 classes of 10 people. We'd help them figure out their values. They would go back to their teams. They would communicate it. And it was like great outcomes. And about the same time, I wrote my first kind of non-marketing book, Elevate, and I talked about spiritual, intellectual, physical, and emotional capacity. And spiritual capacity was about figuring out your core values. So at the time, people were like, well, great, I want to do that. And I'd kind of be like, well, you could check out this website or this keyword. Like, I'm like, you can't take the program that I'm teaching my company. Like, it's not really, I don't know how to give it to you. And so people wanted like the quick checklist.
Right.
And
Yeah. Just tell me what to do. Yeah.
Maybe there's an assessment at some point, but there's not an assessment right now.
Right.
And so I was like, So I was like, why don't I turn this into a course? We've now done 5 or 6 classes that works pretty well. And I had figured out some formulas and frameworks to both figure out the core value, test it, and then make sure. And part of the testing was like, can you make a decision on it? Do we understand where it came from? Can we connect to kind of where it's from? Because they don't come out of nowhere. And that helps you know that, it's important. And a couple thousand people took the course and have had great results. And so that gets me kind of to the beginning of, I was like, oh, I want to get this to more people. A lot of people won't go to a course, so I want to write a book.
Right. Right.
But I'm just not sure anyone's going to want to read a book on values. So I need a different angle.
Well, I think you found it. I mean, I don't know. I think it's really different and exciting. And I think all the things that you put in the book are super helpful and useful. And, at Netflix, we used to send, and the reason why I mentioned Aspen is we used to send all of our executives to Aspen Institute. And then we did that. We started doing that because we believed if we could better the person from a values-based perspective, not get them better, at the strategic
You're
business.
singing my song. Yeah, that
Yeah,
holistically better. The business
yes,
benefits, and then they're better parents
yes,
and kids and
yes.
spouses, and yeah.
Yeah. And so then we ended up building out, we hired the person that ran the Aspen Institute, and then
Right.
we built it at Netflix. But I mean, we were reading things that really had you grapple with where your line was. Like
Yeah.
where are you on that line, right? Of ethics and society. And we were reading like the letter of Birmingham jail and Margaret
Yeah.
Thatcher and you really had to think, and it wasn't thinking about Netflix, it was thinking about your values, and it
Yeah.
really paid off for us.
My answer now is that people lead from their values. The difference is whether they're driving the steering wheel or the person who's doing driver's ed has the steering wheel and is driving the car all over the road. And you're like, why is it going here?
Yeah.
So here's an example I like to give a lot and how it plays out in different situations. Let's say you have a core value that incorporates trust, like build trusting relationships. I've
Sounds
done this
good.
work for like 10 years now. I can tell you, if you told me that or it was coming up, I'd say, Jessica, I'm going to ask you a question. You don't have to answer and tell me what, but was there a violation of trust at some point in your life and when you were younger? And 9.5 out of 10 times, that person will have a tear well up or turn a little ashen or otherwise, because that's a very specific thing.
Right.
I've seen the 0.5 where they grew up in a house where trust was such a positive thing that they carried it forward. But for most people,
Yeah, there's been a time.
they had
Yeah.
this huge violation of trust. Some parent walked out unannounced, no clues when they were 14 years old. Well,
Right.
they're now 40-year-old in the workplace, and this is carried with them. And so they have a small group of friends that's very hard to get into, and they've been with them for a while. By the way, if those friends, and you've asked these people, if someone violates your trust, does it matter what they did, or are they dead to you? These people will be like, they're dead to me, right? And I always say, like, if their partner cheats on them, like, there's no coming back. Well, what happens in the workplace with this sort of person? This can be a great quality, but what I've seen, and I've actually seen it, is that the people who don't know it, they just sort people on their team into, can I trust them or can I not trust them? And so when they're 5 minutes late for a meeting, or they can't be found in the afternoon, or they don't hit a deadline,
Yeah.
it sends these very visceral signals like, Jessica cannot be trusted. She is going to hurt me. She cannot
Yeah.
be trusted.
Ah.
And Jessica gets put in a penalty box with the key thrown out, and she doesn't even know it.
It's so true. It's so true that happens.
She's not being staffed on projects. I
Yeah.
even had an HR person. We did a debrief over one of these situations. Be like, I couldn't understand that manager. Every quarter, she's telling me these people need to be promoted and these people need a PIP. And then the next quarter, it's like the opposite list. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't, and because this is just kind of how they do it. So this is a real problem for the leader and their team if this is going on and no one can explain it or otherwise. Now, let's imagine Jessica's done this work. She knows this. She identifies with this. She's not going into therapy or talking about that, but she understands that, like, this is a protective mechanism that has some really positive things. She's a trusting person, and you can trust. I mean, that's a great quality.
Yeah.
The difference is she hires her team and Jessica says, so Bob, welcome to my team. I just want you to know, like, and this, we're giving one example, but trust is really important to me. And here are the ways that it gets broken. When it gets broken, it's really hard to get back. So if you find that I'm being kind of distant or indifferent or otherwise, there probably has been a break in trust, and you should come to me and we should talk about it. That's
Can
a
you
totally
imagine
different
if
scenario.
can you imagine if like just 40% of managers did that? Because
So the people at our
like
company
hardly
who
I
did that, who
don't
figured out their 4 core values like that, would
they do
actually
it.
go back and deliver a presentation to their team. And they said, "Look, I just spent a lot of time in this leadership training, and I learned that these 4 things are really important to me." So we had someone for whom I can't remember what the actual core value was. I did the work with her, and it was like but it was something around like you must bring fact, like things need to be based in evidence, right? And so if you were on her team, and you kind of brought a theory or a hunch or something like that, it didn't work.
She
Now,
was like, no.
no, and so I got this person to get into this story. Now, why do you think someone who needs things to be proven and evidence based would have that orientation? Just throw a guess out there.
Trust. I guess
Similar, yeah,
yes.
similar.
It's my guess.
She had a parent who was basically a conspiracy theorist, and
Oh,
so
there
her
you
whole
go.
her
That
whole
has no
life.
they don't trust anybody.
Right, well, with less trust, like trust would be
Yeah.
like the person broke my trust, but in this
Yeah.
case, it wasn't trust because they didn't necessarily lie to them,
Right.
right? They said a lot of things in their life that when they got old enough, they realized they weren't true, and so
Right.
what sets in the quickcrete at that point is I'm not going to believe things unless there is like
It proven.
evidence based
Yeah. Yeah. That's
behind them.
fascinating. Oh my gosh.
So
Can
so
you
imagine the difference between someone who's always getting frustrated at their team and doesn't know why, and someone who can articulate that and say to their team, "Look, I'm here to support you, and I'm here to support your new idea and stuff, but like, I need data and facts."
Yeah. I mean, but it's so healthy. I learned in my leadership career to tell people about me, right? Like
Yeah,
here's how I work, here's how I like to work, here's what you can expect from me, and here's what I would like from you. But let me know those things that are uncomfortable for you. Let me know what. And it was just always so much better because we were both clear on what we were going to do. And there wasn't that sort of like, oh, I have to put them in a penalty box for a week because they pissed me off about X, Y, and
and
Z.
you didn't even know you're doing it. So the
Yeah.
way you could take this trust one further is let's pretend that I'm the trust person. I've got someone on my team, and they're coming late to work all of a sudden,
Yeah.
and so I haven't had this discussion, and I don't know this, and I'm like, see, like this person, they are just unreliable, and I'm getting super frustrated, and like pretty soon they're going to be on a pip, and they're going to be out of here. Well, if I had said to that person, and we'll call this person Jack in this case, Jack, he got my trust speech. Like, Jack, it's really important. Like, I give trustworthy. You talk to me, like, again, no see. Jack comes to me and I'm like, "What's going on, Jack? You've been like late, like all this week." And he's like, "Look, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm not telling anyone this, but I'm temporarily separated, from my partner, and I'm living in a hotel, and I'm taking my kid to school, and so it's just taking longer." Well, now as someone who had told you that I was trust, and you trusted me with that story, like my whole, I was probably firing you,
No, I'm not.
before, and now I'm like, oh, like let me help you, right? So it's the ultimate managing up and knowing what is most important to your boss, because that wasn't just a line, or that wasn't something they said. Like, if you really communicate that information in that way, I don't know a lot of people who say like it's all about trust and whatever, and then you tell them something and they blow it
Yeah.
up. I mean,
Yeah.
that has to be a really like diabolical person.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've
Totally.
seen this with self-awareness. I've seen this with other things, but they actually just went back to their team and they kind of were psyched. They're like, "Let me tell you about me."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's liberating because it's not performative. It's who you actually are.
Right. And I think, like, as leaders, sometimes you think you have to have all the answers, and you think, you're sort of put on a pedestal to be this, perfect person. And you're not. And I think when you let that guard down and you get vulnerable with your team, it just goes such a long way. And they
Yeah.
appreciate it, and they see you as a human.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen
Which you
people with
are.
core values of include all perspectives. Again, if we spend 10 minutes digging into that, why does someone have that? Because they weren't heard or they were shut down. But it's important for them to be like, look, on my team, like everyone gets to be heard. You know,
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah.
Like that's a.
I'm thinking about this guy that I
that's a
coach, and I'm like,
non-negotiable.
that's maybe
Yeah.
why. That's maybe why. Okay. Well, you talked it up like why family integrity. Those are not great value.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Like why aren't, because I don't know. You kind of go to every company, or you look at like any type of value thing,
Yeah.
and they're kind of all
Same
the
crap on
same.
the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you
So tell
find the
us.
1 or 2% of companies like Netflix that, you know, says we're a team, not a family, and it sounds different, right? And I think the problem is that we only have the examples of the 2% that do it really well, and not the 80% that love the wall art.
Yeah.
But let's define. I think it helps. Like, so core values are the non-negotiable principles that just guide your behaviors and actions. So similar for a company and individual. They're intrinsic, not aspirational. So they kind of reflect who you are and probably who you've been. They're consistent, and then they show up in all areas of your life. And they're clarifying. They might help you make those better choices about who to spend time with, what work to do, where to live, etc. So to me, a core value has to be something that you can make a decision on. That's the ultimate, or sort of objectively say, I'm doing this or not doing this. This is where the rules are. If it's different than company values, but this is where the rules are similar. It has to be like could come up in a conversation naturally. I was disagreeing with a company years ago that wanted one of its nonprofit to be celebrate diversity. And I'm like, look, you're just never going to say like, hey, on that call yesterday, on your sales call, you didn't do a good job of celebrating diversity. You know, you might say you didn't do a good job of including all perspectives, which is a way of celebrating diversity, but that's a lot more tangible as to the behavior that I want you to do. So the problem with integrity is I've heard 10 different definitions of integrity. Some people mean it's telling the truth. Some people it's mean your word should match your actions. Others believe you should be living in harmony, you know, with what you're supposed to be doing. And so when I hear integrity, I'm like, let's go one step deeper than that. Like, what is integrity to you? And what comes out of that is a different answer that's much closer to a value, right? Like, I think integrity is always telling the truth. Or I think integrity is, as we just said, your words match your actions. Or the character in the book, you know, he would have said integrity, but his different was integrity was about being trusted, right? And these are all different, but they're important because that root is you'll see it across friends and family and business. Similarly, what can I do with family and business? Nothing. And do you really mean family? Is family an absolute? Family is a priority, but I always say like, look, there's a lot of families that like let the drunk uncle, you know, act like a jerk at the wedding, do whatever. Like, that's not how I am. Like that actually would, it doesn't, I'm going to call you out on no matter who you are. So when I say to people, okay, again, what is well, family means a small trusted group, or family means always showing up and being present. Okay, always showing up and being present. How does that look like? Does that look like your friendships? Yeah. Like I think it's really important to be there. Does that look like how you show up as a manager? Yeah. Well, that's much more helpful to you, right? To have this orienting principle that you can use consistently. And by the way, if you're that person that says always show up, and you have a friend whose father died, and you're in a busy and you're launching a book and whatever, and the funeral's there, and you're like, I don't know, do I have time to go? Whatever, you should go. Because you're going to feel horrible if that's your core value and you miss it. And I was giving this example to someone as a fake example, and I think it was actually really close to their core value. And they started telling me about this funeral that they missed 20 years ago that they still regret. And so I was like, I guess that story is accurate, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's an interesting example. So I think, you know, for the listeners, what you're saying is that you have to go deeper. You have to reflect on the definition and get clear on what these mean. Because again, like how I'm interpreting integrity is different than how you might interpret it. And so you have to find, again, what your line is in those things. Because, you know, nobody's going to say integrity doesn't matter, right? But when you drill down into what matters to you about integrity, that might be different
and
than.
then you can see that how that plays out in different areas, and
Right.
that can help you with decision making. One of my favorite stories, this is a company story. It probably should have been a Netflix story, but Gary Ridge, but it just shows you that there's some absolute rights and wrongs, right? Like there's like, I mean, maybe not anymore, but there's like lying and truth, right? And hitting and not hitting. But most things are not. It's just from a decision standpoint, it's how do I feel about it in a day, a week, and a year. And Gary was the CEO who big believer in values, and he turned around WD-40, and he would do this exercise with business school students. And again, this sounds like something that would have come out of Netflix. He would give them a problem to solve in an hour, the first group. The second group, he would give them an hour and a problem to solve and a list of core values. The third group, he would give them a problem to solve, an hour, and a list of core values, and he would say, this is the hierarchy. This one's more important than this one, this one.
Okay.
First group, barely done in an hour. Second group, done 40, 50 minutes every time. Third group, done in a half hour, right? So it actually proves that the decisions in themselves are not, the value became the rubric from which to make the decision. So I think it's true for companies, right? And there's probably plenty of companies who would have said, we are a family, and therefore we don't lay off people who've been there a while for a long time. But it's also true for I think it's that same decision-making rubric for individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but I think individuals don't often get to a point where they can be truly reflective on these things. Companies don't often get to a point where
Companies don't know.
Yeah.
The difference is, you'll laugh at this. Individuals have just never done it or thought about it. Companies did it performatively and never used it.
Right.
That's
so
the
true.
difference.
That is the difference. Okay. Well, I know we're kind of running a little bit out of time, but okay. Any other things that you want the listeners to know about values? Any advice that you have for them?
Yeah. So again, the book is sort of, and the framework is orchestrated around this big three. And I think if you don't make a core values aligned decision with respect to your partner, your vocation, or your company, or your community, I just don't think it's going to work. Interestingly, on the personal side, and it's taken me a long time, I didn't understand this in my 20s. I think that sometimes, and people are, it's interesting, my daughter's in college, and there seems to be a move away from the traditional dating apps, almost to apps that are based on your network and who you know and people sort of putting you together. Because you're ostensibly trying to pick all of these surface level things that are the same. Right. Someone joked in there, like, it's basically you're finding a best friend. Most of the people that you and I know are married, we wouldn't have necessarily put them together, right? There's some connection or some opposite attract thing, but I think like we tend to look at these surface things around. Do we have the same activities? Do we like the same song? We don't do that.
Yeah. Do you play pickleball?
Not what makes that's not what makes a relationship last. Particularly when you have kids and you have to agree on the big things, and you have to be aligned on the sort of values. And in fact, I know a couple of people going through kind of, bad through divorces, and it's almost like that value thing just keeps haunting them, where it's like, oh my God, like this, we just like don't, there's people that divorce, but they're like, we're going to put the kids first and we're going to get along. And then there's just like World War III.
Yeah.
And I think like
that's
those
so
were
true.
just,
yeah,
those are ones where they're just, it even became more clear that they didn't have the same values, because in trying to undo it, they don't agree at all on this very important thing on how to create harmony or peace. So I think it's an interesting way to look at, thinking about, I think both ways. I think there's people that may be in a really strong relationship where they were sort of, maybe looking at a lot of surface level things that were off, or the inverse where, hey, like, yeah, that was fun for the first week. We like to play tennis and all this stuff, but we just
now I need something more.
Yeah, like you're running a Mac operating system. I'm running a PC. Like it doesn't run the same hardware. Imagine.
Yeah, I'm Apple. You're Android.
Two people are in a relationship, and one for I know we have to go. I won't get deep, but one
Well, we've got
really
one more thing
believes,
to do.
yeah, lives for today,
Yeah.
and the other is really a planner and wants to focus on tomorrow. They can get around that, right? That's a
Right.
danger zone, but they come to that. But if you have like four of those that line up totally
Right.
opposite, that's going to be really hard.
Yeah. Well, listen, you may have to go back to school to become a therapist because, you're maybe going to
I ran
be
a professional
causing.
services business for 20 years. I kind of think like I
That's a little
am
bit of therapy. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
1 degree away from therapy because we never had an issue with that was not people. There's no
Right.
product. There's no
No.
production line.
Yeah.
It's always people.
Yeah. Well, listen, get your phone ready because there may be some calls that you'll be getting. But listen, I was hoping that you join me in a career confession. And if you remember, these are questions that our listeners send
Yeah.
in for work advice. So I'm going to set it up for you with the
Sure.
context. So here's the context. I work hard, hit my goals, and keep saying yes, but I'm exhausted. I want to grow, yet it feels like I'm running on empty. Here's the question. How can I rebuild my energy and motivation without burning out and start performing at a higher level that actually feels sustainable?
I mean, not to not look. I would have answered this, either way with this, but burnout is not more work in my experience. It is doing things that don't align to your values and don't fulfill you, right? When
Exactly.
when
I
we're
was going to
working
say,
on
and then you
stuff,
might, yeah, keep
yeah,
going.
no, I say when you're working on something that is like the stuff that you go do for 8 hours, like in the middle of the night because you're just sort of into it, versus the other thing for half an hour feels like torture. So what I hear in this person's question is there are a lot of extrinsic things. There are goals, things I should be doing, things I should be wanting, things other people are telling me, and it's burning me out. That to me is a strong clue that they haven't kind of taken a look inward a little bit at what do you value, what do you want to do? And if you put yourself in an environment that rewards that, I don't think you'll have burnout. I have fully come to believe that burnout isn't about number of hours. And
No, it's not. It's about the joy that you're getting doing the things that you're doing with the people that you're doing them with. And so, one, I think this person should get your book, and then two, they should get your other book if they sort of go through and
then buy
find
10
that.
copies for their friends. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then 20 if they need to, and then they might need the book 2 week notice, the other book, because they might find that their values don't align, and then they can read that book and figure out how to transition out
Well,
in
they
a
shouldn't. They
really.
should. The only problem with that is that it's hard to execute that in a company that doesn't support it, right?
That's
So
true,
that,
but they can still have
yeah,
a little bit of grace around it.
yes.
You
I,
know,
I actually advise when people tell me what do I do when I realize my values aren't aligned with the place I work, and what I advise them to do is what I try to tell companies to avoid, which is you should quit and stay. You should basically be like, look, maybe because we all can't be Jerry Maguire and drop the mic and walk out. We got bills to pay. But the minute you say, look, I'm going to leave Acme Corp and because it doesn't align with my values and I'm going to start looking for something else, you
yeah,
feel inherently freer.
yeah, it's true. It's true. Um, Listen, I love your books. I love your stuff. It resonates so much with me. I always have fun when we talk. I hope you're going to write another book.
I
So
have, but it's going to be a few years. It's a different twist, but this one has worn me out.
I
But
feel
so
like you're,
it'll
I
be a
feel like
couple
you're
years.
up for like a nonfiction. Like I feel like, you need to do like nonfiction kind of thing.
I'll be back to nonfiction for the next one.
I think so. But thank you so much for coming on again. And thank you for writing great books that we all can use and need.
Thank you for having me, and always enjoy chatting with you.
Yeah.